And so my name is Michelle Bear, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the Scholarly Communications and Open Educational Resources Librarian. I've been here for over 20 years. And so I'm the kind of the main point person for the grants and the information about the OER program here at Western. So what I'm starting out with here is the webpage that has the grant information. And so if you, have questions after what we go through today, there's lots of information here. I want to in particular point you down here to the full information about the links to the application form and how the grants run and so on. So I just want to make sure that you all know about this page, because that's basically where the information is. Of course, you can ask me any questions that you have, but there's quite a bit of information here. So I'm going to stop that, and then I'm going to share my PowerPoint. So give me a second here. And then, so as I said, we're going to have time for questions at the end. But if you have any burning questions that you want to ask along the way, please feel free to do that. So let me, okay, can everybody see my PowerPoint? All right, I'm going to, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but when I get going, sometimes I don't, sometimes I miss it. So as I said, feel free to unmute yourself or just wait till the end. So, as I said, this is, just kind of an overview of the Open Educational Resources grant program that we run here out of the library. And so I already gave you the URL for that webpage where most of the information is available for you. But as I said, feel free to get in touch after today if you have questions. So we have two kinds of grants. We have the adoption grant and the creation grant. So I'll be talking about both of those. The adoption grant is $1,000. The creation grant is $5,000. Those are per project. So I'll talk about, kind of specifically the money part of this. But the grant is per project. So if you're co-teaching a class with somebody, or you want to write a book with somebody, the payout is per project. So the deadline is November the 17th, and we will notify you whether or not you're successful and make the announcements by December the 8th. So I'll start out talking about the adoption grant. So the point of the adoption grant is basically to encourage faculty, to give incentives to faculty to drop a commercial textbook that costs students money and replace it with an openly licensed resource. We've been fairly liberal about that, and so we've been also allowing, so if you can find a good openly licensed resource, but it doesn't exactly cover everything that you intend to cover in your curriculum, you can supplement that with maybe course reserves. You might want to supplement that with an ebook that comes through the library or some journal articles or something like that. But basically, there can't be any cost to the students. So you won't be eligible for the grant if you're still making them buy a book that's $20. So really you have to use something that's open, and then you can supplement it with some sort of library free resources or free to student resources. As I said, and I can certainly talk to you about that, well, first of all, looking for an openly licensed book that will fit your curriculum. But as I said, and if there's some parts of it that are just don't work for you, and you want to supplement that with one of the, or streaming video, or anything like that you want to supplement, as long as it doesn't make the students have to purchase anything. And so for this round of grants, I think this is either the 4th or 5th round that we've had for this round of grants. The class would run in the spring, summer, or fall of 2024. So in some cases, the class runs more than once during that time period, but that's the time period for this particular adoption grant. I would say it's quite likely that we will run this again in the spring. So if you, decide you can't get it together, or you can't find something, then you certainly will, it's quite likely that you'll have another opportunity. I can't guarantee it, but I would say it's quite likely that you'll have another opportunity. So as far as the adoption grant, Kind of the requirements are you have to submit the syllabus for the course. So you have to email me, if you're successful in getting the grant, at some point I need the syllabus for the course. And so you can send it to me when it's done or at the end of the semester. There is a survey that the faculty need to complete. It's not very long, but it basically just asks you about your experience. Would you do it again? How did it work? What was the perception of the students as far as the book goes, and how it all ran. And so we use that to, kind of inform the program. And so that is required before that survey has to be completed before I can authorize the money to be paid out. There's a survey of students that's optional, so it's not required for the grant. But we really encourage you to do it. And and I'll share it back to you. So if you want to know, what did the students think? So the student survey is pretty short. And it just basically asks them for their experience with the book. Was it better or worse than the, commercial textbooks they've used? How did it affect their preparation for the class, and so on? And so some instructors are really interested to know what the student experience is. And so I can share that back so I can just filter out the students in your class. And then as far as again, the money part, so the payout is either to your research account, and if that's the case, then it's the whole amount of money. Or if you want it personally paid out to you, then it is subject to tax. So if it goes in your research account, and by the way, we don't care what you do with it. You can attend a conference, pay a grad student, buy furniture. There's no restrictions once you get the money on what you can do with it. Sometimes people ask that question. They think it has to be, used for a particular purpose, and it doesn't. Once you get the money in your research account, we don't have any restrictions on it. So I did want to mention that we are using Pressbook software as our platform for the OER program. And so we just purchased it maybe 6 months ago. So it's a publishing platform that's kind of the industry standard for creating, adapting, and sharing open books. One of the reasons we bought it, and one of the reasons it works really well, is that it integrates with D2L. So if the book that you're using is a Pressbooks book, which a lot of them are, then we can import it into D2L. The students can use it there. You can adapt it, so if the book that you're adopting, you don't really like one of the chapters, or you want to rearrange them, or you want to add your own examples or something like that. If it's in Pressbooks, then it's super easy to make those changes. So I have a link, by the way, to the Pressbooks standard. I will send the slides out after this because it does have the links in there. So there's a list of all the books that are in Pressbooks. And so I haven't used the software a whole lot myself, but it's designed, for the purposes of textbooks. It has the kind of formatting and layout and what you would expect to see as far as a textbook that you would use in a course. Okay, so moving on to the creation grant. The creation grant, the $5,000 creation grant, is for creation of an original openly licensed text. The final product will be published under Creative Commons license, so I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's not under traditional copyright. It will be a Creative Commons license, which basically means that it's open for sharing, which is really kind of the point of all of these. So if you develop the open book and get the creation grant, the final product will be published in such a way, and you do have some options. As I said, I'll talk about those as far as how you want to share that, but it'll be a Creative Commons license as opposed to traditional copyright. So I wanted to mention that we have 6 previous grant winners. We have yet to publish our first book. I'm hoping that's going to happen this coming semester. But we have 6 grant winners who are working on projects right now. And so I wanted to mention that because if sometimes people like to get in touch with previous grant winners to find out if they'll share their application materials or anything like that. So we do have people who are currently working on projects that you would be welcome to get in touch with. And you can actually get the names off the website, but I can also tell you who they are if you want to, get some information from them. What original means in this context. I guess you can use, I guess I'm not sure that I have a really good definition. The question in the chat was about what is considered original. So it would have to be, I guess maybe we can talk about this in more detail afterwards. You can use part of a open book that's already there to adapt a new book. And so I'm not sure what to say as far as, so anyway, we might want to talk about that at the end about specifically what you have in mind, because you certainly can use, pieces and parts of other openly licensed materials that you want to adapt or, change the perspective or add to it. In fact, one of our current grants, they are adding chapters on, it's a religion book, and they're adding chapters on indigenous religions and things like that. So, so I'm not sure I have a good definition for you. It might be, we might want to talk about the specific instance that you had in mind. So as far as the creation grant, all of the criteria for the application are on the website, but there's a few that I wanted to highlight, that you'll want to consider as you're putting the application together. So the availability of the OER that are already out in that subject area. So, things that are really filling a niche, or filling a gap, I should say, are things that we're really looking for. So if there's already, quite a few books on your topic area, that may be of less interest than if there really is no books in the subject area. And I know there's plenty of subject areas out there where there just aren't very many OER. So that's part of the reason we have the grant, to encourage people to to fill those gaps. There really needs to be some mention or some plan as far as the accessibility. I think kind of the basics are any images that you have are going to have an alt text. So for people with visual impairments who use screen readers, the headings, there are some standards as far as headings. And again, that has to do with students who are visually impaired using screen readers, that the text will be accessible. You want to address the sustainability, because that's honestly one of the things that people complain about with OERs. They're sometimes not updated as often as they should be. So how are you going to address anything that needs to be corrected, revised, updated, especially certain fields are updated more than others. The timeline, I have 12 to 18 months, and I can tell you, especially as we're learning as we go, 12 to 18 months is probably pretty ambitious. That's kind of our target. And I think as long as you're making progress, can be longer than that. I'm kind of seems like these projects are sort of like home improvement projects that you think it's going to be done, in a shorter period of time than it actually gets done. So that's kind of our timeline. So if you get the creation grant, we do have an MOU that we work with the authors, and so we kind of lay out the expectations and kind of what our target is for the timeline. But it's we're in communications with one another if there needs to be a delay or things happen. So the intention of the grant is to pay it out at the end. So the $5,000 would be paid out when the book is published. But if there are certain expenses related to the development, we could pay out ahead of time. So sometimes, somebody wants to pay a grad student, or you want to, use some money to, buy some software or to purchase an image or something like that. So that's all negotiable. And so if you want some of your money ahead of time, as long as it's, pretty clear that you're making good progress and you're, you're eventually going to end up with a final product, then we can pay out ahead of time. I should also say, I forgot to put this in the slides, but we also have a budget of about $2,000 per project that we contribute. And so those can be for things like, we just paid somebody to write a glossary, and things like copy editing. If there's something, you want to use a copyrighted image, and there's a fee for that. So within our budget for these projects, we have a budget of $2,000 per project that we can pay out for those sort of supporty kinds of things that may need to come up along the way. The final product will be hosted in the WMU ScholarWorks. and also deposited in the open textbook library. So if you're familiar with that, again, I have a link to that. So I'll send the PowerPoint out so you can have the link if you want to look to see what the open textbook library is all about. And again, there's a payout to your option, and you can, you don't have to tell us until you're ready to get paid out, either into your research account, and again, then you get the full amount, or to you personally, in which case the amount would be taxed. And so I also have a link to the scoring rubric on the page, on the OER grants page. There is all of the different criteria that we use in scoring the applications, but there's also a rubric that I have. It's a Google Doc that I have linked here, and I could certainly email that out, but like I said, the link will be in the PowerPoint presentation here. So as I mentioned, the grant amount is per project. So if you want to co-author with somebody, or you want somebody to write a chapter or something like that, then it's just one $5,000 grant, and we can talk about how to split that out if you are working with somebody. So as far as the development, if you want to do it in Word, or if you want to do it in Google Docs, and that's what we have right now, and then we'll put it into Pressbooks. So the WMUX is is operating the Pressbooks instance that we have. So if it's more comfortable for you to write in MS Word or Google Docs or LaTeX or whatever you normally use, you can do that. And then when you're pretty close to being done, we can put it into Pressbooks. Again, one of the nice things about Pressbooks is you can also use it while it's in development. So if you're working on creating it, and you're teaching the class this semester, you can actually use it with your class and tweak it as you go. Use that feedback to improve the book that you're working on. So I mentioned the Creative Commons licenses. So for the creation grant, whatever you are going to publish is going to have one of these licenses, and you can decide which one. So if you're not already familiar with Creative Commons, you've probably seen the symbol. You might not have paid attention to it. And there's 6 different licenses that you see here within Creative Commons. Like TED Talks are probably the most common thing that you might have run into that have a Creative Commons license. And TED Talks are usually this one, I believe, which is the CC BY no derivatives. And so for the creation grant, whatever you come up with, we'll have one of these, and I can just go through them briefly. This is the most sort of open of the licenses, CC BY, which just means Creative Commons attribution. So that means you don't care if anybody adapts it, revises it, condenses it, whatever they do with it, as long as they say it's your original work. This one is the CC BY share alike, which means that that you are saying that whoever uses your work can revise it, adapt it, do whatever they want. They have to attribute it to you, and then whatever they put out has to be shared under the same type of license. The no derivatives means that, as I said, TED Talks are no derivatives because they don't want you to slice them and dice them. If you put your book together and you decide, really, for my intellectual property here, I don't want anybody to mess with it. I don't want them to revise it. And so they're welcome to use it. But I don't want them to revise it or adapt it or anything like that. The NC is non-commercial, which means that you don't give permission for anybody to do anything that would make money off it. So we have more people doing that, partly because publishers are getting to be a little bit more, they're using these things and then adding some value added thing and then charging for them, adding homework or adding something like that and then charging for them. So if you don't want your work to end up like that, you can say non-commercial. And so then they're just kind of variations of these. And so I did have a link here. So when you get the slides, if you want to follow up with the Creative Commons website, there's a lot more information on exactly how these things work. And again, you don't have to decide until you're pretty much ready to publish. So if you change your mind along the way, then you can certainly do that. I also wanted to mention that, one of the barriers here is these things are a lot of work. And I also have to get tenure, and I also want to get promoted. And so I have actually put together a guide that's based on a lot of other work that other people have done about how you can include this kind of work in your tenure and promotion. So it just kind of gives you some suggestions and tips on, if you want to do this kind of work, how can I talk about it in such a way that it will help me fulfill my requirements for tenure and promotion. So there's some really good information there, and like I said, some suggestions for how to write your narrative, and how to include these things as so you get credit basically for your in your tenure and promotion. Okay, so that is what I had to go through. So here's my contact information, and I think I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and then I can open it up for questions. And I know I already had that one, which I didn't really address very well, but let me stop sharing, and we'll take other questions. So Thisbe, I don't know if you want to say any more about your particular situation. I guess, are you asking about making something open that's currently under copyright, like something that no, okay.
No, and I've been poking around a little on the open textbook library to see what I'm thinking of is more, I think it would be more like an anthology. So I'm a creative writing professor, and I put together regularly I basically create an anthology on e-learning every time I teach certain classes mostly it's in flash fiction. So it's really, really short pieces of fiction. And it's all like what I did during the pandemic was to have all of the stories I had students reading were online accessible. So they were all already open resources.
Right,
And
right.
I'm trying to figure out if this is even, if my project even belongs in your project. Like, I don't even know. So I'm trying to figure out if it would make any sense to try to create that anthology as an open resource text. So it's a lot of different resource.
Yeah, I've certainly seen other people do that, so I think it's a possibility. Is it all your work, or is some of it student work, or?
Oh,
No.
it's no, it's stories by other people that have been published in literary magazines
Gotcha.
online.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
okay, got it. Sorry, I misunderstood.
No, I'm not explaining it well, I think.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna actually stop the recording. I meant to do that before. Yeah, I think you could certainly do that. I mean, it has to be for teaching a class, right? So this is what you use in a class. It's like a text for a class, and it would be a class that would be offered on other campuses as well that could use this anthology that you're thinking of.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I could imagine, like, I group the stories each day under like a theme or a craft element or something. So it's like all short stories related to one idea. And then there are writing exercises that go along with the readings for that day. And I haven't been able to figure out if it even makes sense as an OER thing.
Yeah, and you might want to poke around, because I think I've seen similar things that have been done in other places. So we might want to poke around, or feel free to get in touch. But it certainly sounds like it's got potential. And it sounds to me like it would be would fit the requirements.
Okay, good. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Okay. Other questions or anything that didn't quite make sense? Yep.
Hi. Can retired people do this that are still teaching?
Yes,
Is
you're
that
teaching.
fair?
Yep. You definitely can. And so, yeah, I mean, for creation or adoption, if you're teaching a class, then you're definitely eligible.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm just reading this question in the chat. Some of the evolution OER resources I've seen are the equivalent of one chapter rather than a full book. Would you accept a proposal to use several of these, likely by different authors? Probably. In fact, one of our projects that we have now, she's doing a call for people to write different chapters. Again, as far as the financial arrangements, that would be up to you because we're only paying out the one, so if you're, expecting people to write to do contributions for, scholarly activity, and not paying them. It's just, it's up to you to make those arrangements. Let me make sure I understand this question. Would I accept a proposal to use several of these, likely by different authors? Yes, I think so. Although, as long as it's, going to be used as the text in a class and could potentially be used as the text in a class on other campuses as well. So yeah, I think that that would be fair game.
How many proposals are you going to fund, Michelle?
Well, we said two. We have a pot of money that the dean has allocated for these projects. And each round we said we would choose two. And I can tell you that we've been getting really good applications. So it's getting more competitive, which is great. And I encourage you, if you apply for a creation grant and you don't get it, I still would encourage you to work on it. And we are happy to support, and WMUX is happy to support. So even if you don't get funded, we hope, we would provide whatever support. But we've said two, but we said two last time and we ended up doing four. So I would say at least two, but it really kind of depends. I mean, we don't, as much as honestly the last round, I would have loved to fund everyone that applied because they were all really good proposals. And, we picked four. And so officially two. I know I'm rambling. Officially, we'll do at least two. It's possible we'll do more than that, but no guarantees. And as the adoption, I assume you were asking about creation, but if you're asking about adoption, 10. We've done, and again, that's a little fudgy too. We say we're going to do 10, and again, that's kind of how we budget the fund that we have. But I think we've done 11, 12. We've had some rounds where we've done a little bit more. Obviously the adoption grants are cheaper. We only pay out $1,000. So again, if they're good, viable proposals that we want to fund, we could possibly go over 10, but no guarantees. Any other questions? So those of you who, if you're thinking of doing a creation grant, I encourage you to look really carefully at the requirements, because I can tell you, and again, also get in touch with people who've won in the past, because if they'll share their proposals with you, because you really want to address, sometimes like for example, the accessibility. People say, oh yeah, I'll make it accessible. Well, it'd be good to know a little bit more detail about how you're going to do that. In terms of like how you're going to update it. Oh yeah, I'll update it. Well, it's helpful to, have a little bit more thought put into that, a little bit more of a plan. So you want to, to be successful in getting this grant, I would really encourage you to make sure that you're covering all of the issues in the proposal, as you're putting your proposal together.
So that help would be from WMS X or the faculty technician.
Yeah. So what WMUX? So they're basically administering that Pressbook software. So that's the software that kind of formats the book, and it also integrates if you wanted to have some interactive components. So I want to have some quizzes or some little videos or something like that that's interactive as part of the book. There's also kind of some plugins there with Pressbooks that works that way. So it's a little bit different from a print commercial textbook. So WMUX, and the instructional design people over there can be helpful with that as far as setting those kinds of things up in the book. And then, as I mentioned, having it loaded into D2L so that if you're teaching the class next semester or over the summer, and you can kind of put your draft of your book in there and use it as you're teaching the class so that you can get that feedback and, make revisions based on, how things went when you taught that class. And then we're here at the library to help support, and so some of the projects that we have now, they want maps made, they want, and so we have somebody here in the library who makes wonderful maps. And so, there are things like that or other kinds of publishing support, like I said, like copy editing. We have we're part of the Open Education Network, and they have a company they work for, or that works with them. That can do some other kinds of publishing support, including copy editing. And so, so that sort of that end, or if you have questions about, content, then we here at the library can do the support more for the publishing end of things.
How does this handle outside articles? Actually, what I'm doing now is doing a few pages of like Pinker's
Yeah, so
narratives.
are you thinking of creating something from scratch, or are you thinking of adopting
Well,
something that's already out there?
I just like to have them read a page to get the idea. So these are not extended things, but it's
Yeah.
it's not 200
Sure.
pages.
Yeah, so if you were creating something from scratch that's going to be openly licensed, you would have to get permission to include something that's under copyright. So we have to get permission from the publisher. And in some cases, they just say no. In some cases, they charge a fee, which you may or may not be able to pay. And in some cases, they say, okay, so we have like the projects they're working on now. Like there's one where they found an image on a website that they really wanted to include, and so we had to get permission from the person who has the rights to the image to create that. So so as far as creating, including those kinds of things in a book that you're developing, we have to get permission from whoever it is that holds the rights, and hold your breath as far as whether or not that is successful. As far as like the adoption grant, as I mentioned, so if there's, you're adopting an open book, maybe that's already out there, but there's still a journal article you want the students to read, or there's still a newspaper article or part of an ebook or something like that, we can always put that on Course Reserve. And then the students can access it that way. So Course Reserve is, we already have a good way to handle the copyright on that. And as long as it fits within the copyright guidelines, or if it's a book that we've purchased or a database that we have a license to, then then we're able to give students access to that without a problem.
Okay.
But feel free to get in touch with a particular, if you have a particular thing that you want to use, get in touch and I can look at it, because that's just kind of the answer that I just gave you is kind of how it works in general, but
Yeah.
specific things can be different.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, well, as I said, I will send the PowerPoint slides out so you have all those links, and you have that information, and feel free to get in touch. I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat as well. Feel free to get in touch, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I, hope you'll all end up applying for one of the grants. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good Friday. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.